All right, welcome to this little free tutorial on how to complete the way that I did this flamingo. So this is from my Simply Summer Stick and Stitch pack. So I'm just doing it on a hoop today for clear video purposes, but I did this on my daughter's dress before. It's right about here. Looks like this. It would look really cute on a tea towel or a t-shirt or even some jeans or a little bag. That could be so cute. So choose whatever you want to stitch this on. And the first thing you're going to do is just take off the sticker and place it onto the surface of whatever you are trying to stitch and just sort of gently press it down. Okay, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to grab all 6 strands. I'm using the color 152, and I'm going to use this to outline the top half of the flamingo here. So just basically like its neck up to its head, stopping at the beak, and then right here all the way down to here. This is all going to get filled in with loop stitch later, so this is just kind of the top half that I'm filling in right now. And when I'm working with stick and stitch paper, especially when I'm first starting, I like to kind of hold it down with my non-stitching hand, especially as I come up through the fabric, like so that the paper doesn't come off of the fabric. That's actually the way that you really get a sticky needle, is if your paper kind of comes up and your needle gets stuck in it, then your needle can get sticky. But usually if you're holding it down nicely the whole time, it doesn't really get sticky. So I like to just kind of press down with my non-stitching hand right where I am coming up through the fabric. So I'm doing a back stitch here. So you can see I started with a little straight stitch, and then every other stitch after that, you're going to come up a stitch length away. So I'm coming up a stitch length away. A stitch length is however far you want it to be. You kind of want them to be uniform in length. And you're going to go back down through that same hole that you just came through right here. So I'm going to put my needle back down this exact same hole and pull all the way through. And then you'll repeat. So I'm keeping my stitch lengths nice and short, especially as I get to these sort of curved areas where the curve gets a little bit tighter. Probably can fit 2 more right here. So I'm going to continue outlining my flamingo in a back stitch. So I'll complete this line right here, skip over to here, and go all the way down the neck right to the base or to the top of the body. That's all that we're going to do with this method for now. So once you finish that, we'll move on. All right, continuing on, we're going to finish up the top half of the flamingo. So I'm going to work on the eye and the beak here next, the bottom half of the beak. So for the eye, I'm using 3 strands of the color 310, which is some black DMC thread. And I'm going to do a loose little fly stitch for the eye here. So we'll zoom this in for you. So you're going to come up on one end of the little eye crescent shape here, and you're going to begin to make a down stitch on the other end. And then before you pull all the way through, you're going to leave some excess thread out, and I'm going to come back up on the inside at the midpoint of that little crescent shape of the eye. And I'm going to come up through the fabric, and I'm going to pull gently until my thread creates the shape that I want. So right about there, not too tight, I've just created a little crescent shape. And to anchor that down, I'm just going to make a down stitch right on the other side of that thread right there. And then pull it. Now I've got a cute little eye. There was little eyelashes drawn in. You can add those if you want. I decided for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to do the eye shape here. And then for the beak, I like to do a satin stitch, and I start kind of at the tip of the beak right here and pull across up a little bit diagonally to right there. And then I'm going to fill on either side of that with satin stitch to get this beak shape filled in. So I'm working to the left of my little midline first, keeping in that sort of little bit diagonal direction. Okay, and then I'm going to go over here and fill in the rest on this side. And you just kind of use the lines of the beak as your starting and stopping points. Do one more shorter one right here to round this out a little bit. Okay, done with that. All right, I've grabbed some ecru thread, 3 strands of it to be exact, or you could use a white here. Ecru is just a little bit more of an off-white color. And I'm gonna satin stitch in this kind of middle section of the beak, not the beach. I like to start sometimes with a little tiny straight stitch in the middle that will get covered up so that my knot on the back is not where I'm trying to stitch. And I am doing a satin stitch in the direction, kind of following the direction of our beak here. So I'm working sort of a little bit diagonally to get this filled in. And I'm just going to work from one side to the other until I get this all filled in. So you'll continue working all the way across like so. And then we'll move on to the sort of main body or the feathers on our flamingo. Okay, we're gonna work on the body of the flamingo now. We're gonna be using a total of 5 colors here to fill these little sections in. These are just to kind of give you a guideline if you wanted to do a lazy daisy to fill those in, but I'm actually going to use a loop stitch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create 12 strands by doubling 6. So you want to get a really extra long strand of 6 strands off. I'm starting with the color 407 DMC here, and I'm going to feed those through until I get half. I'm going to basically fold my thread in half. So if I double that, you can see I've now got 12 strands. And then I'll tie a knot together at the very end. So I've got 6 strands on either side of my needle through the eye, which gives me a total of 12 strands, right? So it's going to be this long kind of loop that we have here. So this is just gonna allow me to create some really nice, thick, chunky little sections with loop stitch. So here's how I do loop stitch, and I'm just gonna be doing it randomly throughout this area, as much or as little as I wanna use this color, because we're also gonna be repeating that with other colors. So I'm gonna start right here at the edge, and I'm gonna come up through the fabric, and I'm gonna go back down a short stitch length away. You don't have to follow these lines. These are, again, there as part of the kind of design in the stick and stitch pack. I'm just kind of doing it randomly. And you don't want it to be too long because we want this to kind of stick up and be a little bit 3D. So I'm going to begin to pull through the fabric but I'm not going to pull all the way through. I'm going to leave a little bit of it up, and I want to see if I can show you. You can see how it kind of creates like this little loop right here. And so I'm not pulling tight, I'm just pulling until there's a little bit of space within there. And then I'm going to pick another spot to come up through the fabric. And this is where you just have to be a little bit careful. You have to just be a little bit careful to not pull too tight here. So I'm going to come up through the fabric and I'm going to pull until I hit. Okay, right there I can feel the tension and I'm going to stop pulling. If I keep pulling, I will flatten this loop out. So I'll show you. If I keep pulling, I flatten that loop out. And if that happens, you can fix it. You can take your needle and you can kind of run it underneath that last loop and pick it back up a little bit. Like that. So you really want to just pull until you hit the back of the fabric and get tension, and then you can make another loop. And sometimes I like to just pull my needle underneath those just to kind of get them all together and make it a nice loop. And I'm going to continue that as many times as I want to. I'm sort of working all of my loops in this horizontal direction here, following the direction of the feathers. This one I might, since I want to create that outline kind of edge shape, I might do this one a little bit towards this side of the flamingo. You don't want it to leave it too high, just a little bit 3D. It's going to look and feel weird when you're starting, but as we start to fill this in more and more, you'll begin to see how all of these things work together. Whoops. And you'll get this beautiful texture as we continue to fill it in. So again, right now I'm using 12 strands. I doubled 6 in my needle to create that 12, because 12, that's the only way you can really get 12 strands. And I'm just going to continue to fill in until I feel like I have enough of this color, and I will move on to another color. I can always grab more of this color later if I feel like I need more of it. And see, I'm just really randomly filling these in. Sometimes you can use your finger to help you keep it vertical. You will get the feel for this stitch if you just keep practicing a little bit. The nice part about this stitch is even if some of them look wonky to begin with, as you continue to fill in around them, it will just sort of blend together and look really, really cool and textured. So it's just a really fun, it's a pretty forgiving stitch. If some of them pull straight, that's okay. I mean, pull like straight and flat down, that's fine. We just want to try to give it as much height as possible. You can see when I get to some of the edge spaces, I sort of change the direction of my loop to fit the outline of the flamingo. So experiment with that for a little bit, and then I'm going to grab another color in just a moment. Moving on, I now have 12 strands total of the color 353, and I'm going to do the same thing with this color now, create some more loops within the body area of this flamingo. As you're working, one thing that's going to give this a really nice natural textured look is to kind of weave some of your loops over each other. So I'm going to weave this loop just a little bit over this one. And just find places where I can do that throughout. If you're not liking the feel of the loop stitch, you could definitely do French knots to fill in the body of the flamingo here, or lazy daisy stitches all grouped together I think could be really cute. So those are some other options for you. Come up a little bit through the middle of this one and kind of weave it over it like this. Remember, as you're filling in, we have some more colors to do, but you can fill in as much or as little of a certain color as you like. I just want to kind of get this color evenly dispersed, and then I'm going to move on to another color. Okay, that should be about good. I'm going to do a new color now. Now I have 12 strands, 6 doubled of 37.71, and I'm going to fill in a few more loops here. This is just slightly more peachy than that last pink that we did. You can see this is really starting to come together a little bit, get nice and textured. Woo, we love that. Creating texture with embroidery floss, so fun. See, I'm kind of choosing to overlap them sometimes. All right. I'm doing 12 strands of a brighter pink now. This is a 601. So it's just going to give it a little bit of flair, a little bit of contrast. And the last color I have is the same color we did for the outline of the body, so that'll be a nice kind of more neutral pink that we can use to fill in any extra space that was left unstitched. Not going to add in quite as much of this color as I have with some of the other ones because it's pretty bright, so I just like to use it a little more sparingly. here and there, if you will. Okay, I'm going to fill in the rest with our last color. I've got now 12 strands of 152. This is the same color we used to outline the upper half of the flamingo. And I'm going to fill in any remaining little spaces that I see with this. If you wanted to go back and add in more of another color that you felt like you needed more of, you definitely could do that. So now we can really see everything coming together here, creating this really beautiful, vibrant, fluffy, natural looking texture. It's just so cute for this little flamingo. It's so fun to figure out unexpected ways or places to add texture to your embroidery projects. Get that all filled in. I'm almost done here. So just want to show you kind of from the side here, you can see how 3D that sort of gets, and it looks really nice. Now this is stick and stitch paper, as it's from my stick and stitch pack, so as we wash off the stabilizer paper, these will get a little more stiff to the touch, so you just want to be careful when you're washing the paper off. You can see this one right here is a little bit more flat, but it still is nice and soft after washing it a few times. And this one was also in a dress, so it's not going to stick up quite as much as this hooped one, which is really, really nice tight fabric. But it still looks really, really nice, and you're still going to get that texture that you want. Okay, for the legs, I have 6 strands of the ecru thread, and I'm going to start with a regular back stitch. I'm actually going to turn this into a whipped back stitch in a little bit. But to do that, we just start by doing a back stitch to begin. So I'm just gonna simply back stitch each line of the leg all the way until we get to the feet. We'll do the feet in a different color. And then I will show you what I do to turn this into a fun whipped back stitch. So I'm going to do the other leg now, all the way from the top to the bottom. So what I have here is a strand of some of the DMC Diamant shiny floss. This is the grande, like the bigger version of the gold. There's one that's a little bit thinner than this. This one's thicker, and I like using the thicker one, especially when I'm doing a whipped back stitch technique with it. So you could also do this with like 3 strands of a golden color, I think would be nice, or just leave this plain back stitch and don't do whipped back stitch. But to do whipped back stitch, you're going to come up at one end of whichever line you've back stitched, and you're going to push your needle underneath that very first stitch from a certain direction. So for me, I'm going to be working from the top of the line each time and pull through. Then I'm going to come back up to the top of the next stitch and push my needle underneath and pull through. And I'll repeat that all the way across, making sure that I'm coming up and pushing through from the same side of the line each time. It doesn't matter which side of the line you push up through, but it just needs to be consistent throughout. I'm actually going to go ahead and end that right here, and I'm just going to leave that one since it's just one little stitch. Then I'll do the same thing for this bottom one. So this time I'm going to come from the right side every time. push underneath that stitch and pull through, push underneath the next stitch and pull through, push underneath the next stitch and pull through. Sorry, I keep hitting my camera stand. And I'll push underneath this one and pull through, and I'm going to go ahead and end it right there since you can't really see the tiny stitch next to the body. So that's like a fun little shiny detail that I like to add to this flamingo. The last thing we need to do is just stitch in the feet. Okay, for the feet here, I have 3 strands of the DMC color 420, and you're pretty much just going to kind of satin stitch these little feet in. So I'm picking one end to start with, and I'm just going to follow the lines of the feet up towards the leg each time until I get this all filled in. It's kind of just an abstract shape of the foot of the flamingo, so you don't have to really get it exactly shaped perfectly. Just kind of want the idea of the flamingo's little feet down there. Come over here and do this one. And then I will repeat that for the other foot, and we'll be all done, and we'll wash our stabilizer paper off. All right, so there's an example of one of the feet, so repeat that for the other one, and then we're all done stitching. Okay, so once we're all done stitching, the last thing you need to do is remove your stabilizer paper. I am going to take my hoop to the sink, and I'm going to run warm, almost hot water from the sink, and you can let the pressure of the faucet and the running water run over the excess stick and stitch paper, and it will slowly start to dissolve away. You'll see it all dissolve away. A kitchen sink sprayer works really well here too, to kind of, anything that has some good pressure is going to be the best to remove the stick and stitch paper. So you're just going to let that run underneath the kitchen sink, whatever you're working on. So if it's a t-shirt, you're just going to hold that under the sink until you see all the paper get away. You want to kind of work your finger in a little bit of the kind of detail areas, because sometimes it likes to cling to the edges a little bit. So you'll just do that, and then once it's all done, you let it dry completely, and your project should be ready to go. As long as you've tied off the knots in the back very well, if it's a shirt or whatever it might be, you can run that through the wash, and I usually even do it through the dryer, and it holds up just fine. But you can also definitely hand wash just to be a little bit more on the careful side. So hopefully you've enjoyed this little free tutorial on the flamingo from the Simply Summer Stick and Stitch pack, and look forward to seeing you back soon.